So this next section, I'm going to have a look at her in context and try and help you to understand the some of the history, the politics, the social factors at play with the character of Sheila. Perhaps the most important of them is that one in the top left is her as a symbol for female emancipation, for women getting the vote and for the suffragettes. Okay, so in terms of the struggle for gender equality, at the start she's this product of the patriarchy, of this male-dominated household. She has to leave the room, doesn't think for herself, doesn't question things, and she's about to sleepwalk into more patriarchy, this kind of restrictive, constricting marriage where she's just this housewife or this society wife. As it develops, as you know, she's denied this knowledge, denied a voice, crucially, and has these limited expectations of her. But this changes. She learns, she develops, matures, starts to assert herself, and this is her finding her voice. So she's a symbol for those women that fought for the vote, fought for emancipation, fought to have a voice and be taken seriously as a human being, and at the end ends up, the most important voice in the play, really. Certainly with the inspector off stage, she's the conscience of the play, a little bit like perhaps Lisa Simpson is in The Simpsons. She's the smart one, the intelligent one, the one who gets it and can see through all the other people's hypocrisy or other people's stupidity. And the character that the creator, Priestley in this case, is encouraging us to align ourselves with and encouraging us to see things the same way, a bit like Lisa in The Simpsons. So there was the suffragette movement in the years sort of before and after the play is set. It doesn't happen with just one moment of Emily Davison chucking herself under the King's horse in 1913. I think that the suffragette movement is a process, much longer. Demonstrations, petitions. The suffragettes were chaining themselves to railings outside Downing Street. They were arrested. They were beaten. They were imprisoned. In prison, they starved themselves and went on hunger strike. They were so committed to their cause. The top right there, you can see they were then force-fed with pipes down their noses and mouths, so they wouldn't die in prison, and the movement couldn't have this cause of people making martyrs of themselves. So it's a very difficult battle, a very important freedom and right to have been won, and those historically never tend to be given or gifted without a fight. And so Sheila is a sort of symbol of that movement, and she's also a kind of a validation of it in terms of she talks the most sense. She's perhaps the most intelligent, and so why should society only listen to the Burlings or the Geralds or the Ericks and ignore the voices of the Sheilas? The next kind of contextual idea that she perhaps throws up is the struggle for workers' rights. So the tone is very much set by Daddy, Mr. Burling, talking about there's a lot of wild talk about labour trouble in the near future, and he's says the working classes, people say they're going to be a problem, etc. And while she doesn't have much interaction with them and their needs, when she does, she can get a member of the working class sacked very easily, and Eva Smith has no right to appeal or no benefits in this sense, no rights to work and to get sick pay, holiday pay, health and safety in the workplace, or any of these securities that have been won over the decades. And this is a key thing in the background of Inspector Calls. In 1926, you have the general strike, millions of workers from all sorts of different trades, from coal miners to factory workers, to dockers, to matchstick makers, train drivers and transport workers, all going on strike in support of each other for better conditions and pay. And so Priestley's perhaps talking to two groups of people within his audience. Perhaps one, the middle classes who might be at the theatre, suggesting that you need to look after these people, because if they all unite, then you are in trouble and the economy is brought to a standstill. And he's maybe also speaking to the working class, saying you've got to know your value, know your worth, realize the power you have when you stand shoulder to shoulder, and realize your collective strength. And so in Eva, he gives us a character that it should be taken seriously, that should be respected, and should be working in safe, secure conditions and paid properly, etc. So conditions at this time in Edwardian times, you had a lot of child labour, a lot of horrendous working conditions that are unsafe, long hours, no rest, no lunch break, all of those things I've just mentioned. And so Sheila's engagement with that and sacking of Eva Smith is a reminder of those battles that have been fought and should those rights that should be protected. Another key area that she's in terms of context that Sheila's relevant to is that she's perhaps a symbol of this moment in history that should be seized, according to Priestley. She's the hope for the future, the new generation. At the end, there's a big difference between the old generation and the young generation, and Priestley wants us to side with the young generation, because the old generation have screwed it up. They've messed it up. The last 30 years has brought 2 world wars, has brought a Great Depression, has brought the rise and fall of Hitler. You've had concentration camps, atomic weapons, nuclear bombs. This is not a great advertisement for humanity. And so Priestley is of the opinion that out of the ashes of the Second World War, countries and Britain need to rethink things again, need to go in a different direction, need to go in a much more left-wing, socialised, collective direction, rather than a right-wing, individualistic, kind of nationalistic direction, which has brought fire and blood and anguish. And as the inspector says in his closing speech, that's what you'll get. You'll either learn how to live together and learn how to redistribute the wealth or do things collectively, or else sooner or later you'll end up in more war. And so Sheila's this spirit, a symbol of the spirit of 45, as it was described, where they did some extraordinary things with a broken economy and with many men and women dead. And families broken too. In 1948, they still managed to build the NHS, and in 1950, Britain is part of the United Nations being set up, UN buildings in London and so on. So there is this sort of positive hope at the end of the play that despite all the horrors of the suicide and the dead baby and the mistreatment of Eva Smith, that the younger generation perhaps get it a little bit more, and perhaps their eyes are open, and Britain can perhaps look forward to the future more optimistically if it does so in a socialist direction. Right, so I'm just going to finish here with a couple of Sheila quotations. I'll flick them all up, and you can just pause this slide if you need to hunt down some quotations. I don't know who made this picture on the right. I don't know. Yeah, someone's created one for each character. They're quite good. Look them up. If I knew who it was, I would credit them, but I don't, so I won't. Right, these 4 quotations here I think are perhaps some of my favourites, because I think they show her journey, they show her mentality. I think perhaps one of the most important quotes in the whole play is "But these girls aren't cheap labour, they're people." Seems such an obvious fundamental point, but it's one completely lost on Mr. Burling, and it is her sort of social awakening, it's her conscience. She gets it, that why are we not treating human beings like human beings? Why are we seeing them as slaves, as labour to be exploited? And the more we can tread them down in the dirt and pay them less, that means the more profits for Burling Company and Crofts. And she sees that as perhaps an immoral way to operate. And that's a stark contrast with Burling and how she's been brought up. This is her thinking for herself, and certainly this is Priestley suggesting to us this is a much more intelligent, humane way to think. What has happened to Eva Smith really has a massive impact on her. I just can't help thinking about this girl. That's not a line said by other people. Burling is quick to wash his hands of it. Mrs. Burling is quick to say, "I've got nothing to feel sorry for," etc. Gerald is trying to lie about things the whole time. But Sheila's really engaging with what's happened. And the third quotation, "Why, you fool, he knows. Of course he knows. And I hate to think how much he knows that we don't know yet. You'll see. There you see Sheila's intelligence. You see she's perceptive, she's smart, she's nobody's fool. And Gerald is trying to hush everything up and quiet down the fact and keep his affair to minimise the damage to him. But she's already worked out that this inspector is not to be messed with, that he knows more than he's letting on. And that they should be, if they've got any sense, the Burlings, they'll perhaps be a little bit more honest and not try to build up these walls in between the inspector and them. And then the last one, she says bitterly, "I suppose we are all nice people now." And her point is where Mummy and Daddy are still trying to downplay everything and still trying to say this doesn't really matter, it never really happened, it was all a hoax, you young generation, you're so stupid, etc. Sheila's clear that, in a sense, it doesn't matter if the policeman was a policeman or not. It could have been a complete hoax, but it doesn't change what they did. It doesn't change the way they behaved and the way they treated someone. And in a sense, it doesn't matter if it's all the same girl, if it was the same photograph or not. They still did what they did to a human being. And it's also this idea that nothing that Mrs. Burling or even Eric or Gerald did is a crime. There's nothing illegal about what they did, but certainly immoral, and so Priestley's getting us to think about why do we do what we do and what controls our behaviour and where is our moral compass. And it might not be if an old lady falls down in the street and drops all her stuff. It's not illegal to laugh at her and and kind of walk the other way, but you wouldn't do that. No one would do that. It would be immoral, kind of disgusting. So kind of pointing out that we should engage with our behaviour, we should reflect on it, and we should take responsibility for it. And that idea of people being more responsible for each other and looking after each other more, a very socialist idea, very close to Priestley's heart, and perhaps a key message that he wants us to think about through the character of Sheila. Okay, that's about it. I hope that was useful for you. I will try and make some more of these for some of the other characters. Bye for now.